He was just a poor street boy in Lagos with nothing but jokes until the world started listening. But when fame knocks and love whispers, will he still remember who he is beneath the laughter? Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more real-life inspired animated stories. Felix stood in the middle of the hot, crowded Ojuelegba roundabout, wiping sweat off his forehead. The Lagos sun was not kind, but he didn't mind. What bothered him more was the tight pain in his chest, and the time he thought of his mother lying on that old mattress in their one-room face me I face you compound. Mama hadn't smiled in days. The sickness had grown worse. The medicine was expensive. But Felix had something the sickness couldn't steal: his gift. His jokes, with an empty paint bucket flipped upside down as a stool. He stood, faced the rushing crowd, and shouted, "Not only in Lagos you go see trailer where they reverse with full confidence like say Sabi where they go." People slowed down, heads turned, laughter exploded. Someone tossed 200 naira into the cap on the ground. "Give us another one," a keek driver shouted, parked just enough to listen. Felix grinned. "You don't ever chop suya for night and wake up by and they negotiate with your toilet bowl." The laughter came louder. Felix bowed dramatically, then quickly scanned the ground for his earnings. 500 naira. 850. It wasn't much, but it was hope. Hope wrapped in humor.by. At the end of the day, he had 2,600 in notes and coins. Enough to buy paracetamol and rice for dinner. He walked back home, past boys smoking on corners and Danfo conductors hurling insults, holding tight to the money like it was gold. But as he reached his compound, something felt off. The door to their room was wide open. Felix rushed inside, heart pounding like an Okada engine on a bad road. His mother, Mama Nki, was still lying there, coughing softly, her wrapper soaked in sweat. But the polythene bag where he kept their emergency savings money he had hidden behind the old wooden stool was gone. "Ma, did anybody enter this room today?" Felix asked, his voice shaking. She looked up weakly. "Felix, that neighbor, Chinedu, came in earlier. He say he won't borrow broom." Felix's hands balled into fists. Chinedu, that greedy boy with too much perfume and too little shame. Felix had seen him peeping into their room more than once. The 400 they had saved gone. He wanted to scream, to punch the wall. But instead, he turned to his mother and forced a smile. "Don't worry, Mama. I still have today's money. I'll get you food, and we go manage." As he walked back out, his chest heavy with quiet rage, he saw Chinedu leaning on the stair rail, smiling as if nothing happened. "Bro, I hear say you day do comedy for street." "No, be bad. But ABG no turn am to drama now." Chinedu mocked. Felix didn't reply. He didn't have time to fight. He had a bigger war to win against hunger, sickness, and a system that didn't care about boys who sold laughter. Later that night, after feeding Mama and washing her feet, Felix stared at the ceiling, planning. Something had to change. He needed more people to hear him. His jokes deserved more than just streets. If he could make the city laugh, maybe, just maybe, someone out there could change their story. And in that very moment, as the city snored outside and a dying fan hummed above him, Felix made a silent vow. "I'm going to make the whole world laugh, or die trying." The next day, Felix returned to his usual spot or Ojuelegba roundabout. But this time, he came with something different. He had borrowed a clean t-shirt from his friend Musa, polished his cheap sandals with engine oil, and even carried a small cardboard sign he made with a marker, 100 per joke. Laughter is cheaper than pain. He stood tall and started his routine, drawing his usual small crowd. Not only for Lagos you go see beggar way they reject 5, like say him get pose. They laughed, but in the crowd, someone was watching quietly, recording with her phone. She was a petite girl in her 20s, with short natural hair and bright eyes. She didn't say anything, just giggled as she filmed. "Lagos girls go break your heart and help you gather the pieces only to use and decorate another man's proposal." The laughter doubled. The girl kept recording, her hands steady. Her name was Tommy, a social media influencer with 50,000 followers. That same night, she posted the video with the caption, "This boy is pure gold. Who is he? Hashtag Lagos talent street comedy." Within hours, the video was everywhere. Retweets, shares, comments. Big accounts reposted it. Celebrities laughed and tagged their friends. People in London and Accra were now quoting Felix's jokes. Even a popular skit maker DM'd Tommy asking to meet the boy, but Felix had no idea. He was still boiling rice for Mama when Musa stormed. in phone in hand. Felix, you don't blow. Oh, you don't enter internet. Felix blinked. Internet how? Muser shoved the phone in his face. Now you be this. He watched himself on screen, cracking jokes. The video already had 120,000 views. His hands started shaking. Wait and be all this? You they trend, bro? Muser said, nearly dancing. OMO. This your laughter don't enter another level. Felix just sat down, speechless. The world had finally heard him, but he didn't know what came next, or what it would cost. 2 days later, Felix was still trying to understand the buzz when a sleek black Prado Jeep pulled up outside their compound. People gathered instantly, children, mechanics, and curious mamas tying rappers. Nobody ever came here in a car like that unless they were lost or looking for someone in serious trouble. The driver stepped out first, then a tall woman in a purple blazer and gold heels. She looked like she didn't belong in this neighborhood. Excuse me, is this the house of Felix Okonkwo? She asked. Felix stepped out slowly, wiping his palms on his shorts. Yes, I'm Felix. The woman smiled. I'm Mrs. Adime. I work with Tangle Academy. It's one of the top private schools in Lekki. We saw your video, and our board was impressed. We'd like to offer you a full scholarship. The entire compound gasped. Felix looked around, confused. A scholarship? Yes. Tuition, books, uniforms, everything. Your talent deserves to grow where it can shine. Felix couldn't speak. His throat felt tight. He looked at his mother, who was sitting near the door, covered in her faded wrapper. Her eyes were wide with disbelief. Mrs. Adimi added, if you accept, you start next week. It was everything he had dreamed of. A chance to learn, to escape poverty, to finally do something meaningful with his life. But deep inside, a strange fear crept in. Would he fit in with rich kids? Would he still be funny in a school full of polished accents and expensive sneakers? He forced a smile. Yes, Ma, I accept. As she handed him an envelope with the admission letter, Felix had no idea that this offer would change not just his life, but test his soul, because the richer the place, the higher the walls. The sun hadn't even fully risen when Felix stood in front of the mirror inside Muse's cousin's room, adjusting the stiff white shirt that came with his new uniform. He looked like someone else, neat, tucked in and clean. But the eyes in the mirror still belonged to a street boy. A boy who once joked for coins. Musa, half asleep on the bed, mumbled, you sure say DM go accept you like this? Those rich people know they play. Felix tried to smile. DM go laugh, ABI. Laughter no get class, but deep down, he was nervous. What if they mocked his accent? What if nobody laughed? What if he wasn't good enough? At 8 o'clock a.m. sharp, he stepped into the tall gates of Tangle Academy. The buildings were glassy and cold, with security men who looked like bouncers. Inside, everything gleamed, tiles like mirrors, students with iPads, lockers with keycodes. The smell of air freshener and expensive perfume filled the halls. Is that the comedian boy from Twitter? A girl whispered as he passed. You. He looks poor, someone else added. Felix kept walking, his stomach twisted with each step. His school bag, donated by a church NGO, looked like it belonged in another century compared to the leather backpacks around him. But he remembered Mama's voice that morning. Felix, no let their money confuse you. You carry joy inside you. That one passed gold. In his first-class English literature, he tried to sit quietly at the back, but the teacher called him out. Mr. Felix Okonkwo, welcome to our school. Class, this is the young man making Nigeria laugh again. Hope you'll bring some smiles here too. The class chuckled, but not kindly, and just as he sat, someone threw a paper ball at him. He turned. A tall, light-skinned boy with dyed hair winked. You foot makers laugh here, or you they charge for premium jokes now? The class burst into laughter, but it wasn't kind. Felix didn't reply. He just faced forward and clenched his fists under the table. This was not the crowd on the streets. These laughs felt different. They stuck.by lunchtime. Felix wanted to leave. He sat alone at a plastic table under the mango tree near the back of the school compound. Everyone else was either filming TikToks, showing off sneakers, or ordering food online. Nobody noticed him. He unwrapped his bread and groundnut butter and took small bites. He missed the Jalegba, the Danfo horns, the energy, the small smiles people gave after a good joke. Here, everything was filtered. Hi, a soft voice said behind him. He turned to see a girl standing there, holding a book. She wore glasses. Her hair was in twists, and she looked like the type who read more than she talked. She smiled gently. Can I sit? Felix nodded, unsure. I'm Iniola. I sit 2 rows behind you in literature. He tried to smile. I'm Felix. I think everybody knows already. I do. But I also know that you didn't eat anything at break. He looked down at his bread. Not hungry. She shrugged. Okay. But I think it's brave what you do. Making people laugh is hard. Especially when you're the one hurting. He froze. Nobody had said that before. She continued. They don't get it yet. But I do. Just don't lose yourself here, Felix. This school can be loud. But you've got something deeper. Then she stood up and walked away, leaving behind her book Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Inside it was a note. You're not here to fit in. You're here to stand out. Felix stared at the note for a long time. And for the first time since entering Tangle Academy, he smiled. The next morning, Felix arrived at school early, determined to start fresh. He kept Iniola's note in his pocket like a lucky charm. Maybe today would be different. Maybe if he just focused, stayed quiet, and kept his head down, everything would be fine. But in Tangle Academy, drama didn't wait for permission. As soon as he walked into class, the tall boy with dyed hair stood at the doorway, blocking his path. Morning. Comedian. Got any fresh material today? Or are you just here to study poverty? Laughter erupted around them. Felix stared at him. I just want to sit. The boy stepped closer. No problem. You can sit. After you dance for us. Come on. Make us laugh like you did in that viral video. This is your stage, Mr. Clown. Felix's jaw clenched. He could feel the heat rise in his chest. His ears buzzed. But he remembered Mama's words and Iniola's voice. So he forced a laugh. Bro, I do try enter class, not audition for Nollywood. The students giggled. The boy's smile faded just a bit. Big mouth. The boy muttered. Try that again and see if you last here. That was when the teacher walked in, breaking the tension. But from that moment, Felix knew 2 things. This wasn't going to be easy. He had just made his first enemy. Daniel Bakar, son of a powerful senator and self-declared king of Tangle. After school that day, Felix was walking toward the gate when he heard someone call his name. It was Iniola. She was standing beside a blue Corolla, holding a sketchbook. Wait up, she said. You okay? He paused. Yeah, just tired of pretending I don't care. She looked down, then back at him. You don't have to pretend. I see the way Daniel talks to you. He does that to anyone who threatens his spotlight. You are not the first. Felix raised an eyebrow. And what? You were his target too. She shrugged. Once, I won a poetry competition. He hated that I beat his cousin. The next week, someone spilled juice on all my books. It stopped when I stopped reacting. They both stood silently for a moment as the wind carried dust from the road. Then Iniola asked, Do you miss the street? Felix nodded slowly. Every day. There, people laughed with me. Here, they laugh at me. She smiled. Then maybe it's time you remind them why you went viral in the first place. He looked at her. How? Talent Day. It's in 2 weeks. Perform your comedy, but do it your way. Tell your story. Felix hesitated. They won't listen. They will, she said. Because laughter isn't free. It's a gift. And yours saved lives online. It can do the same here. Felix didn't know what hit him harder, her words or the fact that someone finally believed in him without laughing first. As she got into the car and drove off, Felix stood still, holding tightly onto her sketchbook she'd accidentally left behind. He opened it. On the first page was a pencil drawing of a boy standing on a cracked road, holding a megaphone. Above it, the words, Sometimes the loudest voices come from the quietest hearts. He smiled, and this time, it wasn't forced. Felix couldn't sleep that night. He laid on his thin mattress, staring at the patched ceiling, his fingers tracing the edge of Iniola's sketchbook. Her drawing kept replaying in his mind. A boy with a megaphone, a broken road, a message bigger than comedy. Was that how she saw him? He wasn't sure if it was hope, pressure, or fear, but something inside was shifting. He was no longer the same street boy telling jokes for coins. Now he had a choice to make. Stay invisible, or speak louder than he ever had before. The next morning, he returned the sketchbook to Iniola. She gave him a soft smile, and for once, he smiled first. After class, he went straight to the school's talent show coordinator and wrote his name down. Felix Okonkwo stand-up comedy. By the next morning, the whole school knew. Comedian boy one climbed stage. Hope he no go talk toilet jokes. Oh, Lagos internet go soon disgrace him live. Felix ignored them all. But one person wasn't laughing. Daniel.at. Lunch. Daniel stood at the center of the cafeteria, surrounded by his usual clique. So this street clown wants to perform? Tangle deserves better entertainment. I think we should give him a proper stage welcome. He pulled out his phone. Let's dig. Let's find something dirty on him. Maybe those begging videos online, or a clip of his mother. Anything embarrassing. If the crowd laughs at him before he opens his mouth, he won't recover. One of his boys smirked. Already on it. Boss, the game had changed. This was no longer about jokes. It was war. The day before the talent show, Felix walked into the school's ICT lab to practice with the MIC and lighting crew. Mr. Dyer, the tech teacher, let him test the sound. For the first time, Felix heard his own voice echo inside a real auditorium. It felt powerful and terrifying. On his way out, he bumped into a junior student who dropped a flash drive. Sorry, Felix said, bending to pick it up. The boy looked scared. It's not mine. Someone gave me to give the AV guy. For tomorrow, Felix frowned. Who gave you? The boy hesitated. Daniel. He say it's for the big screen during talent show. Felix's heart sank. He waited until the AV teacher left, then plugged the flash drive into the nearest school computer. What he saw made his hands shake. It was a video montage of Felix's old street clips, except edited to look embarrassing. They had slowed his voice down, added sound effects of animal noises, and even inserted clips of his mother coughing violently. One slide read, From Ojulegba to Joke Liba, Why Poverty Should Stay in the Streets. Felix's face burned. His eyes filled with tears he refused to let fall. He quietly ejected the flash and slid it into his pocket. That night, he sat in silence while Mama snored softly in the background. He could destroy the drive, walk away from the show, stay safe, or he could let them play it, then take the stage, and flip the story himself. As the ceiling fan squeaked overhead, Felix whispered to himself, You want to laugh at me? Fine, but you'll never laugh the same again. The morning of Talent Day came with a heavy sky over Lagos. Clouds gathered like spectators waiting for a show. Felix barely touched his breakfast. Mama noticed. You sure say you're okay, Mai? Peek in? She asked, gently touching his hand. He nodded. Yes, Mama. Just bit day, she smiled weakly. Then go make them laugh. No matter what happened, remember your gift no come from them. It come from inside you. Felix swallowed the lump in his throat. At school, the auditorium buzzed with energy. Spotlights swept across the stage. Students filled every seat. Parents, teachers, and even some online influencers had been invited. Tangle Academy was showing off. Backstage, Felix stood alone, holding a crumpled paper with his jokes. But he wasn't sure anymore. He could feel the tension in the air. He hadn't told anyone what Daniel planned. Maybe he should have. Then he saw her Inola standing near the side curtain, watching him quietly. You ready? She asked. No, he whispered. She stepped forward and pressed something into his hand. It was a small badge made of cardboard. On it, she had written, Joy is power. Felix looked at it for a long time, and then they called his name. Next up, Felix Okonkwo, our rising comedian. Felix walked out slowly. Lights blinded him. Whispers filled the room. Somewhere in the front row, Daniel smirked with his arms folded. His boys were ready. The AV guy nodded at Daniel. Then it happened. The projector came on. The screen behind Felix lit up. The edited video started to play. Students gasped. Laughter echoed cruel laughter. Some covered their mouths. Others looked uncomfortable. The sound of Mama coughing echoed through the auditorium. A goat sound effect played over Felix's joke. Someone shouted, ABG, go back to your street. The room shook with laughter. Felix just stood there still, silent. Then he stepped forward and took the MIC. He looked straight into the crowd. Straight at Daniel. You know, he began, his voice shaking. When I started telling jokes, it was on a street corner in Ojulegba. People laughed not because they were mocking me, but because they needed to feel joy. They had nothing, but they still laughed. The room went quiet. He continued, You think this video embarrasses me? No, I lived it. I walked barefoot to buy medicine. I begged. I made people laugh while crying inside. And now, I'm here. You may laugh at me, but remember you paid nothing to enter this room. But I paid everything to stand on this stage. A few students clapped. Felix glanced at the screen again. Play all the clips. Post them again online. Just remember the boy you're mocking is the same one who made the world laugh. Then he took a breath and launched into his comedy routine. Not polished, not perfect, but raw, real. He told jokes about Lagos traffic, about Mama's loud snore, about rich kids who don't know how to bargain in the market. He mocked himself, he mocked privilege, and he turned the pain in the projector into pure gold. By the end of his set, the entire auditorium was on their feet. Applause, cheers, whistles, and Daniel, he was already walking out. Eniola met Felix at the curtain, eyes shining. You burned down the whole place, she whispered. Felix smiled, tears finally falling. I didn't come here to fit in, he said. I came here to remind them why we laugh. The video of Felix's performance at the talent show went viral overnight again. But this time, it wasn't just the jokes. It was his truth, his pain, his fire. Someone in the audience had recorded his speech and posted it on TikTok with the caption, "He turned their laughter into power. This is what courage looks like." It hit 1 million views by morning. Suddenly, Felix's name was everywhere. Blogs, YouTube reactions, interviews, even radio mentions. Major media houses requested sit-downs. People reposted his quotes. "You paid nothing to enter this room, but I paid everything to stand on this stage," was now printed on t-shirts. Mama, still recovering, sat proudly in their small room, surrounded by visitors dropping gifts. A bakery dropped loaves of bread. A pharmacy donated medicine. Strangers sent cash to Felix's account. The landlord, who used to ignore them, now greeted Mama with her hands. But the biggest knock came on a Tuesday afternoon. Tangle's principal called Felix to his office. Inside were 2 sharply dressed men in suits. They introduced themselves as representatives of Zebra TV, one of Nigeria's biggest streaming platforms. "We're developing a youth-focused comedy talk show," one of them said. "We want you to host a segment. We'll pay. You'll have a mentor. Your job is to be yourself." Felix blinked. "You mean, like, perform on TV?" "Not just perform. Be the voice. Share your story. Make people laugh. Every week." It was too fast, too big, too unreal. They handed him a contract and told him to go home and think. On the way back to class, Felix passed Daniel, sitting alone in the courtyard. For the first time, Daniel looked like the joke. By Friday, the contract offer had spread around school. Some students cheered Felix on. Others became suddenly friendly. Teachers called him Mr. Celebrity in the hallway. Even the ones who once mocked him now wanted selfies. But Felix couldn't breathe. Everywhere he turned, people wanted something from him. Jokes, videos, answers. Even Musa called asking if he could get a Zebra TV audition too. He couldn't even laugh freely anymore. Everything felt loud. At night, he sat with Mama in the small kitchen, away from the fans and visitors. She saw the pressure on his face. "You know they smile again. My son," she said softly. Felix sighed. "Ma, I dey try. But now everybody dey look be like say I be product. No be me DM dey see. Nah wetin I represent." She looked at him gently. "Fame no be enemy. But if you know hold your ground, he go carry you like breeze. You fit be loud for the world, but empty for inside. Make sure you no lose the boy who dey tell jokes just to make him Mama forget pain." Those words hit like thunder. Later that night, Eniola called. "Have you signed the contract?" she asked. Felix stared at it. "Not yet. I feel like once I sign, I can't come back." "You don't need to come back. Just don't forget where you started from." He didn't reply. She paused. "If the contract is too heavy for your piece, then it's too expensive." Felix hung up and stared out the window. He thought about the megaphone in Eniola's sketch, the boy on the cracked road, and he asked himself the question that mattered most. Was he ready to be more than the boy who sold laughter? The next morning, Felix arrived at school to find everyone buzzing, but not about the TV contract. Something had changed. Some students were whispering and pointing. Others were outright staring. One girl scrolled on her phone and shook her head in disgust. Felix caught the word fraud and fake story more than once. He approached Musa, who looked away nervously. "What's going on?" Felix asked. Musa hesitated, then handed him his phone. There it was, a blog post going viral, titled, "Lagos Liar. Viral comedian story doesn't add up. Neighbors say he's not that poor." The article included blurry pictures of Felix standing near a fancy car from Zebra TV's visit, claimed his mother wasn't really sick, and even suggested he had faked the poverty angle to get public sympathy. Worst of all, it quoted someone from his compound who said, "That boy just likes attention. He's been acting like a celebrity before internet knew him." Felix's head spun. It wasn't just a random article. The pictures were taken from inside his own compound. Someone had sent those photos and leaked those lies. Later that afternoon, he found out who Chinedu, the same boy who once stole their emergency savings. Felix cornered him outside a roadside shop near their house. "Why?" he asked, voice low and cold. Chinedu smirked. "Because you dey carry shoulder like say not only you suffer. We all dey struggle, Felix, but you get the shine. You forget who you be." Felix's fists clenched. For a second, he almost acted on rage. But then, he saw the sadness in China's eyes. Jealousy. Emptiness. He didn't say another word. He turned and walked away. But inside, something broke. That night, the phone calls from Zebra TV stopped. The interview requests paused. The media that once praised him now questioned his truth. Mama saw the pain in his eyes and didn't speak, just held his hand while he lay beside her. Felix didn't cry. He felt numb. He sat on the balcony, staring into the busy night street. Ojeligba's noise comforted him. It didn't expect him to be perfect. It only asked him to keep going. His phone buzzed. Iniola. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "I saw the article," she said. Felix swallowed. "You believe it?" "No," he exhaled. "But even if it were true," she continued, "do you know what matters more than where you come from?" He didn't answer. "It's where you decide to stand when the world turns on you. You don't owe them your pain, Felix. You owe yourself peace." "I think I'm done," he said quietly. "No more jokes. No more spotlight." She paused. "Then come to the bridge. The one near the old stadium." He frowned. "Why?" "Because I'm there now, and I brought something I think you forgot." 15 minutes later, Felix arrived on the bridge. Iniola stood holding a sketchpad. She opened it. On a new page was a fresh drawing. A boy standing in a storm, holding a broken mic. But his mouth was still open, speaking, smiling, fighting. Underneath, she had written, "Even silence can be powerful if it carries truth." Felix stared at the sketch for a long time. His throat tightened. His chest finally softened. He didn't say much. He just sat beside her on the ledge, looking at Lagos light up beneath them, and for the first time in days, he let himself laugh, not because of a joke, but because he was still standing. The following Monday, Felix returned to school, not to perform, not to impress, but just to exist. He walked through the gates with his bag slung low and his head a little higher than before. The whispers were still there, but they were softer now. Some students looked at him curiously, like they were waiting to see what he'd do next. Daniel was nowhere in sight. His shine had dimmed ever since Felix's standing ovation at the talent show. It seemed like people were finally realizing that real influence isn't loud, it's lasting. Iniola found him during lunch, holding a warm meat pie and bottle of water. She handed them over without a word. Felix smiled and took a bite. "Guess what?" she said. "What?" "The Zebra TV producer called the school this morning. They're coming back." Felix froze. "I thought they dropped me. They saw your sketch online. The one I posted, with your mic in the storm. It went viral." Again, he blinked. "You posted that?" She nodded. "Captioned it." The boy didn't stop talking. The world just stopped listening. Now, he's back. Felix's hands trembled around the water bottle. His chest felt heavy, not because he was afraid, but because he realized he had been wrong. His story wasn't over. That same day, during literature class, the teacher asked if anyone had a short poem or performance to share before the bell rang. Felix stood up. He walked to the front, cleared his throat, and then, softly, he said, "They said I lied, but I lived it. They said I begged, but I gave more than I ever got. They said I laughed too much, so I cried in silence. Now I'm here, not to prove I suffered, but to prove I survived." Silence. Then applause, real applause. Not from fans, from people who finally saw him. Just when Felix thought the storm had passed, another dark cloud rolled in. During assembly, the school principal made an announcement. "Students, please welcome our newest visitor, Senator Bakar, parent of one of our finest students." Heads turned. Felix's stomach twisted. Daniel's father, Senator Bakar, tall and broad-shouldered with eyes like glass, walked across the stage. He had a stiff smile and an expensive agbada. Daniel walked behind him, smug again, holding a tablet. The senator took the mic. "Good morning, students. It has come to my attention that certain elements within this school are being elevated far beyond their station. We must not confuse internet fame with substance. Let us not lose our values in pursuit of trending topics." He didn't mention Felix's name, but the message was clear. Later that day, Felix was called to the principal's office. Senator Picard sat behind the desk like he owned it. The principal sat beside him, nervous. "I've heard of you, Felix," the senator began. "Street boy turned hero. Very romantic. But schools like this are built on class, discipline, image. Your kind of noise doesn't belong here." Felix clenched his jaw. "So why am I still here?" Senator Picard smiled coldly. "Because the school is soft, sentimental. But let me be clear, if you make one mistake, one wrong move, I'll make sure you're not just expelled, but blacklisted." Felix sat in silence, and then, calmly, he said, "Senator, I'm not afraid to start over." "That's how I got here in the first place." The senator stood. "Careful, boy. Lagos may love you today, but it forgets fast." Felix rose too. "That's okay. I'm not doing this for Lagos anymore." And he walked out, heart pounding, hands shaking but dignity intact. Because now, the game wasn't just about laughter. It was about legacy. For the next few days, things moved fast. Zebra TV came back with cameras. This time, they weren't just offering Felix a segment, they wanted a full show built around his life. From street to stage, they called it. Felix would perform short skits, interview guests from similar backgrounds, and even mentor other street comedians. The contract was fair. The producer, Madame Rita, seemed genuine. And for the first time, Felix was being paid in both money and respect. Mama's medicine became consistent. The leaking roof was patched. Even their neighbor who once mocked them started sweeping their corridor without being asked. Everything looked good. Until it didn't. One afternoon, as Felix walked into school, 2 policemen were waiting by the gate. They didn't smile. "Are you Felix Okonkwo?" one asked. Felix hesitated. "Yes. You're under investigation for defamation and identity fraud," the man said, pulling out a paper, confused. Students began to gather. "What's going on?" Inola asked, running up breathlessly. The officer turned to her. "He is being accused of falsifying information to collect charity under false pretenses. There's also an allegation of spreading harmful content." Felix's mouth opened, but no words came. The students looked stunned. Phones were already out, recording. "Please come with us for questioning," the officer said. Felix was handcuffed and led away in front of the whole school, behind the crowd. Daniel stood in silence, but his face, that smirk, was back. The police station was cold and loud. Felix sat on a plastic chair, staring at the dusty fan spinning slowly above him. His hands shook. His mind raced. He didn't cry. He was beyond tears. A plainclothes officer came in and dropped a file in front of him. Inside were screenshots, anonymous reports, forged text messages, edited bank statements, and an audio clip of someone pretending to be Mama saying she was never sick. Felix's heart broke. He knew immediately who did it. Daniel and his father. This wasn't just about jealousy anymore. It was revenge. They wanted to destroy his credibility, erase his story, make him disappear. But they had underestimated something. Felix had nothing left to hide. When Madame Rita from Zebra TV arrived with a lawyer, Felix finally spoke. "I want to tell my story. All of it. With proof." They sat with him through the night as he explained everything. How he started selling jokes. How Mama fell ill. How Chinadu stole from them. How the street became his stage. He handed them the voice notes he had saved, the original video footage, even the receipts from the hospital that treated Mama. Inola showed up with copies of her sketches and social posts that matched the timeline. Her quiet presence was the loudest support he needed. By morning, Felix was cleared. Not only that, the story of his arrest went viral too, but this time, the comments weren't mocking. They were furious. This boy went through hell, and they still tried to silence him. "We stand with Felix. You can't arrest joy." The hashtag Free Felix trended in Lagos for 24 hours. And on live TV, the Zebra producer said, "You don't silence a voice that gives the poor a reason to laugh. You amplify it." Felix was offered a press conference spot, but instead of giving a speech, he stood there quietly for a second, then pulled the mic close and told a joke. "Not only for Lagos DM go arrest you for smiling too much." The room laughed. Loud, real, and Felix, he smiled, because he had just turned his pain into power. Fame had officially arrived. Felix wasn't just a local sensation anymore, he was a national voice. His Zebra TV skits trended weekly. His quotes were printed on posters, faux wallpapers, and even painted on danforths across Lagos. Students who once mocked him now asked for his autograph, but all of it came with a price. Felix barely had time to breathe. From school to filming to charity appearances, he was constantly moving. Everyone wanted a piece of him, teachers, bloggers, fans, even strangers who cried when they saw him. One night, after filming 3 back-to-back episodes, he returned home to find Mama sitting outside on the bench. The sky was dark, the air quiet. She didn't look sick, just thoughtful. "Mama, you should be inside. You know, go catch cold." She patted the seat beside her. "Sit." He did, for a long time. They said nothing. The streets hummed around them. A baby cried in the next compound. A car backfired somewhere far away. Then Mama spoke. "I want to go back to the village." Felix said softly. "What? I don't try, Felix. Lagos don't bless us through you. But this noise, this pressure, this city life no be for me again." He stared at her. "But who go take care of you? I go build house first here. AC, generator, flat screen. I no want any of that," she said gently. "I want peace, real peace. I want to farm again. I want to wake up and hear birds. Not siren." His eyes welled up. "But I still need you here." She touched his cheek. "You no need me to hold your hand anymore. You are not the boy who sold laughter. You are the young man who made the world listen." She stood slowly. "Let me go where I can breathe. You stay where you can fly." And just like that, Felix felt more alone than ever, even with a million people clapping for him. 2 weeks later, Mama was gone. She left quietly, without fanfare, with a single Ghana must go back and a goodbye prayer. Felix had tried not to cry, but when the bus drove off and he saw her hand wave from the window, his knees gave out. Eniola was there. She helped him stand, but something inside him shifted. He became sharper, more focused, less available. Fame had given him power, but now it demanded control. Sponsors wanted him to sanitize his jokes, make them safer, avoid class warfare and poverty themes. Be funny, but not too raw, a TV director told him. A tech company offered him a brand deal worth $3 million, but only if he stopped referencing suffering in his punchlines. "People want to laugh, not feel guilty," they said. Felix looked them in the eye. "Then maybe I'm not your comedian." He walked out, but the pressure didn't stop. Rumors spread again. This time, not from enemies but from the inside. One of his new managers, someone Zebra TV hired, was leaking info, selling backstage clips, twisting headlines to get press. A blog posted, "Felix rejects 3M brand deal. Is fame getting to his head?" It got worse. Eniola called him one night, her voice shaking. "You need to be careful. The same people that lift you up can use your honesty against you." Felix leaned against his wall, staring at the cracked ceiling again. But this time, the silence didn't bring peace. He whispered to himself, "I started with laughter. Now I'm surrounded by noise." And deep down, he knew if he didn't control his story, someone else would. It was the biggest night of his life. Zebra TV was celebrating its 10th anniversary, and Felix had been chosen to close the event with a live comedy monologue broadcasted nationwide. Celebrities, politicians, business tycoons, and influencers would be in the crowd. He was meant to play it safe. The producers had given him a clean script, edited jokes, brand-friendly lines, and topics that wouldn't offend high society. No jabs at poverty, they warned. No talk about class or struggle. Keep it light, keep it polished. Felix sat backstage, wearing a crisp white kaftan. Cameras rolled, microphones tested. His heart thumped hard in his chest. Eniola sent him a message minutes before he went on. "They want the suit, but we know the soul. Be brave." Then it was time. The host introduced him with applause, calling him the voice of the streets, the boy who turned laughter into a language. Felix walked on stage slowly. He looked into the crowd, the lights, the glitter, the VIPs sipping champagne. Somewhere, Daniel and his father were seated in the front row. He took a breath and dropped the script on the floor. The audience gasped. "I was told not to talk about the streets tonight," he said calmly. "They said it would ruin the vibe. They said some people here might feel uncomfortable." He paused. "But when I had nothing, discomfort was my daily life. So if my truth offends your wealth, I'm not the problem, your conscience is." The room fell quiet. He continued. "When I was 10, my mother sold ice water in traffic. When I was 12, I learned to turn hunger into humor. When I was 17, I made you laugh on the street, so I wouldn't cry alone at home." The silence turned into slow, emotional claps. I didn't get here to make you feel good. I got here to remind you that the people you ignore still exist. I will make you laugh, but you will remember why. By the end, the crowd stood, some with tears in their eyes. Even Madame Rita from Zebra TV was clapping, and backstage, the producer who gave him the clean script sat red-faced, but Felix didn't care. He had told the truth on his own terms. The next morning, social media exploded. Clips from Felix's monologue flooded timelines. Some called it brave, others disrespectful. Some hailed him as a national treasure. Others accused him of being too political. But one thing was clear: everyone was talking. Felix Unscripted trended in Nigeria for 48 hours. Interviews rolled in. People who once doubted him now praised him. Brands that once backed away returned with new offers this time. Respecting his voice, Zebra TV stood by him. Madame Rita even released a statement. Felix reminded us what entertainment should be: a mirror, not a mask. But not everyone was celebrating. Daniel's father, Senator Bakar, released a press statement accusing Felix of being divisive and a threat to national harmony. Rumors swirled that certain sponsors were pressuring Zebra TV to replace him. Felix was called in for a meeting. He sat across from the board, calm, ready. "We're proud of you," Madame Rita said. "But we're under pressure. If we keep you on, some of our biggest backers might pull out." Felix nodded. "So what are you saying? We want to give you your own digital platform under our brand. No TV restrictions, full creative control. But you'll lose primetime access." He thought for a moment, then smiled. "Give me the platform. Let the people who need to hear me find me." By that weekend, Felix launched his own show online, raw, unfiltered, and deeply personal. It blew up overnight. His first episode was titled, "Laughter Doesn't Need Permission," and in the comments under thousands of shares, one stood out. From Ojulegba to the world, this boy didn't just sell laughter. He gave us a reason to feel again. Felix stared at the comment, smiled, and whispered to himself, "I didn't fall. I flew." 3 weeks after launching his new online show, Felix was everywhere. He was invited to universities to speak. His skits were being subtitled in French and Swahili. He did a surprise drop-in at a secondary school at AG, and the entire student body rushed out to hug him. For the first time, his name felt bigger than his face. Then it came the call that would change everything. An email first, then a follow-up video call. A woman from BBC Africa reached out. She was British Nigerian, sharp-eyed, and spoke with a London accent that somehow still felt familiar. "We're doing a documentary series called Voices of the New Africa," she explained. "Your story. It's raw, honest. We want to fly you to London to feature in it." Felix blinked. "London? As in plane, passport, snow?" She smiled. "As in global platform. As in the whole world hears what Lagos has been hearing." For months, Felix didn't say yes immediately. He went home and sat in Mama's old chair. Even though she wasn't there, he could feel her presence like a warm wrap around his shoulders. He thought about the laughter he sold under the sun, the beatings he took, the hunger that built him, and the pain that shaped his voice. Then, slowly, he said aloud, "Let them hear me. From Ojulegba to London. Let them hear me." And just like that, the next phase of his story began. But while the world was preparing to celebrate Felix in London, someone else was planning to stop him. He started with a message from Musa. "Guy, can we talk?" They met near their old street corner, the one where Felix used to flip a bucket and perform jokes in the sun. Musa looked nervous. "I don't know how to say this," he began. "But someone has been leaking your travel documents." Felix frowned. "Leaking?" Musa hesitated. "I didn't believe it at first. But the screenshots were traced to my email, my phone, and I swear to God, I didn't do it." Felix's heart dropped. "So who did?" Musa didn't answer right away, but his eyes said it all. "You left your laptop with me once," Musa continued, "the day of that big radio interview. I guess Janadu used it." Felix's blood ran cold. Janadu again. The same boy who once stole his savings, who sold lies to blogs, who pretended to move on. He had hacked Felix's private info, and now he was sending it to tabloid blogs, trying to dig up anything to stop Felix from boarding that flight. Who really is Felix Okonkwo? The dark past he never told his fans. Did he exaggerate his suffering? All headlines that began to appear on sketchy gossip pages. Felix was furious, but more than that, he was tired. He met with Madame Rita. "I'm cancelling the flight," he said. She looked at him like he'd lost his mind. What? Why? I'm not running from my past, but I'm not dragging my mother's name across more blog posts. Not for fame. Madame Rita nodded slowly. You don't owe anyone an explanation, but you also don't owe Chinadu your silence. That night, Felix did something bold. He filmed a short video, not funny, not edited, not dressed up, just him, sitting on the same plastic chair he once used to perform. He looked straight into the lens. Yes, I've been lied on. Yes, I was. Poor. Yes, I begged. Yes, I laughed to survive. If that makes me weak to you, then maybe strength is overrated. But I'll say this: everything I am, I earned. With scars, with truth, and no block, no bitter boy, no rumor will erase my story. He posted it and went to sleep. When he woke up, 4.2 million views. Hashtag we stand with Felix trending worldwide. And a message from BBC. Felix, your honesty just made the story stronger. Your flight is confirmed. Pack your truth. We'll handle the rest. Felix had never been on a plane before. He sat by the window the entire flight, staring at the clouds like they were whispers from another world. He couldn't believe it, from Ojulegba streets to international skies. When the plane touched down in London Heathrow, the cold air slapped him like reality. The BBC team welcomed him with cameras, smiles, and a warm cup of tea. But Felix barely drank it. His thoughts were back in Lagos with Mama, with Iniola, with the boy he used to be. His hotel room overlooked the Thames. Everything was neat, clean, quiet. Too quiet. That night, he stared out the window and said out loud, I'm here. But something's missing. The next morning, he was taken to the studio. Lights, MICs, stylists. He felt like a star, but also like a stranger to himself. During the interview, the journalist asked about the laughter, the pain, the rise to fame. He answered with grace. Jokes, honesty. Then she leaned forward and asked, what's the one thing you've never talked about publicly? Felix froze. She waited. His voice came out soft. My father. The room went still. Felix had never spoken about his father, not in interviews, not on stage, not even with Iniola. Now, under the London lights, he found the words. He left when I was 5. No letter, no money, no goodbye. I used to wait by the window every Sunday, thinking he'd show up. He never did. And when people laughed at my jokes on the street, a part of me hoped he'd hear them. That somewhere in this loud world, he'd know his son didn't disappear. But the truth, I haven't forgiven him. Not fully, maybe not even half. But I turned the silence he left into laughter. And I think that's enough for now. The interviewer blinked back tears. When the episode aired that night, it shook the internet. People flooded his inbox with messages about absent fathers, abandonment, healing. The laughter he had once sold for 1 euro had now become something deeper. It was healing people. Even Chinedu, the boy who had tried to destroy him, posted anonymously. I tried to dim your light because I was angry at my own darkness. I'm sorry. And in the middle of the night, Felix's hotel phone rang. It was a number from Nigeria. He hesitated, then picked up. A deep, quiet voice said, Felix, I saw your interview. I think I'm your father. Silence. Then Felix replied, voice steady. If you are, then you owe me a conversation, not just a call. The line went dead, but his chest felt lighter, because for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of the past anymore. Felix stepped out of Murtala Mohammed Airport with no cameras, no crew, just a backpack and a quiet heart. London had changed something in him, but it hadn't replaced who he was. He didn't return to the Zebra office or his shiny Lekki apartment. Instead, he took a cab straight to Ojulegba. As the cab bounced along familiar potholes, Felix saw the streets that built him. The okadas weaving through cars. The street hawkers calling out. The same woman still roasting corn near the footbridge. Nothing had changed, but he had. He walked to the spot where he used to perform near the roundabout, right under the traffic light. He stood there for a while, letting the noise fill him like home. Then he pulled out a stool from his bag. The same red one he had once painted with his last 2 naira. He stood on it, and without a mic, without cameras, without applause, he shouted, You day sad? Come laugh small. Heads turned. Some recognized him instantly. Others didn't, but the crowd grew. Within minutes, Felix had dozens of people around him. He launched into jokes raw, street, hilarious. But every punchline came with a message. No, be everybody way laugh day happy. But every laugh ma small healing. If you know fit change your life today, at least smile like say you fit. The crowd clapped. Some laughed. Others cried, and when it was done, Felix bowed low not for fame, but for gratitude. Then, from the back of the crowd, someone walked forward. Eniola, she'd come, quiet as always, steady as ever. She handed him an envelope. No name, no sender, she whispered. But it came to your house while you were gone. Felix took it. The handwriting was unfamiliar. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single letter. Dear Felix, I don't know if I deserve to write this. I don't know if you ever want to see me. But I watched you on that stage, and I saw the son I ran from. I was a coward. I let shame bury me. I thought silence would protect you from my failure. But instead, it made you carry a weight no child should ever hold. Your strength has taught me more than my pride ever could. I don't expect forgiveness. But if there's ever space in your life for a broken man who wants to start again, I'd like to meet you, not as your father, but as a man who is learning from his son. I live in Billionaire now, farming, trying to build something honest. If you come, I'll be waiting. Joseph. Felix stared at the letter. His chest ached, but not with anger. Not anymore. Eniola stepped beside him. Quiet. What will you do? She asked. He folded the letter carefully and slid it into his pocket. I'll think about it, he said softly. But today, he turned back toward the crowd, who were now waving, shouting, some still smiling. I'll give them what I've always given them. He stood tall, raised his hands, and shouted, I'm still the boy who sold laughter. But now I give it for free. The crowd roared, and somewhere, deep in Ojalegba, a new chapter began, not with pain or applause, but with peace, because the boy had grown, the laughter had healed, and the world was finally listening.